Welcome to this lecture on higher order derivatives. If you have ever been in a car and felt yourself pushed back into your seat when the driver steps on the gas, you have physically experienced a higher order derivative. Today, we are going to build your understanding of this topic from the ground up. We will learn not just how to calculate these derivatives, but what they actually mean in the real world and why they are so essential in calculus, physics, and engineering. Now that we know what we are studying, let us look at a real-world example. Imagine you're driving down a straight highway. Your position changes as time passes, and the rate at which your position changes is your velocity. In calculus, this velocity is the first derivative of your position. But what happens when you press down hard on the gas pedal? Your velocity is no longer constant, it is actively increasing. The rate at which your velocity changes is called acceleration. Because acceleration is the rate of change of velocity, it is essentially the rate of change of the rate of change. In mathematics, we call this a second derivative. If your acceleration changes abruptly, you feel a sudden push, which engineers call jerk, the third derivative. This physical concept we just discussed can be seen clearly when we graph these functions. Look at the top graph, which represents position. Notice what happens when the position curve reaches a peak and flattens out. At that exact moment, its slope is zero. If you look directly below at the middle graph, which is velocity, you will see it crosses the zero line at that exact same moment. Similarly, when the velocity curve reaches its highest point and flattens out, its slope is zero. Looking at the bottom graph, the acceleration line crosses zero at that exact time. Every graph here is simply a map of the slopes of the graph directly above it. Seeing these graphs helps us understand the visual relationship. But how do we handle this mathematically? A standard derivative tells us the instantaneous rate of change of a given function. When we calculate the derivative of a starting function, the result is an entirely new function. Because this new result is itself a function, it has its own graph and its own varying slopes, just like we saw with velocity. If this new function is smooth enough, meaning it does not have sharp corners or breaks, we can calculate its rate of change just like we did with the original. Taking the derivative of the first derivative gives us the second derivative. We can continue this chain of differentiation as many times as we want, provided the resulting functions remain smooth and continuous. Before we calculate anything, we need to understand how mathematicians write these repeated derivatives. This formula shows the standard Leibniz notation for the second derivative. Conceptually, it comes from applying the derivative operator, d by dx, directly to the first derivative, dy by dx. To save space, mathematicians combine the symbols. The superscript 2 on the top indicates that the derivative operation has been applied twice to the function y. The superscript 2 on the bottom indicates that the derivative was taken with respect to the variable x both times. If the variable y represents position in meters and x represents time in seconds, the unit for the second derivative would be meters per second squared. Increasing the second derivative means the rate of change is accelerating faster. Now that we have seen the second derivative, we can generalize this to any number of derivatives. This equation shows the nth derivative in both Leibniz notation on the left and prime notation on the right. The symbol n represents the order of the derivative, which is just the total number of times we have applied the derivative process. Notice that for prime notation, once we get past 3 tick marks, it becomes too hard to read. To fix this visual clutter, we put the number of the derivative inside parentheses in the exponent position. The parentheses are absolutely crucial here. Without them, the notation would just mean the original function multiplied by itself n times, which is completely different from taking the nth derivative. If n increases, we are simply looking at deeper layers of change. Let us apply this notation and concept to a basic polynomial function. We are given the function y equals x to the 4th power minus 2x cubed plus 5x minus 1. And we are asked to find the first, second, and third derivatives. Our strategy is simple. We will use the standard power rule for derivatives, which tells us to multiply the term by the exponent and then subtract 1 from the exponent. For the first derivative, we bring down the 4 to multiply with x, making it 4x cubed. We bring down the 3 to multiply with the negative 2, making it negative 6x squared. The 5x becomes just 5 and the constant negative 1 disappears because the rate of change of a constant is always 0. Continuing from our first derivative, we now want to find the second derivative. To do this, we treat our new equation, 4x cubed minus 6x squared plus 5, as our starting point and apply the power rule again. The 3 multiplies the 4 to give 12x squared, and the 2 multiplies the negative 6 to give negative 12x. The constant 5 from the previous step has now disappeared, turning into 0. We have successfully found the second derivative. Notice how with each step, the polynomial becomes simpler and the highest power of x decreases by 1. This is a fundamental behavior of polynomials when we take repeated derivatives. Finally, to find the third derivative, we simply take the derivative of our second derivative equation. The 2 multiplies the 12 to give 24x and the negative 12x becomes just negative 12. This gives us our final answer for the third derivative. Physically, if our original equation represented the position of an object, this final answer would represent its jerk. If we were to continue to the fourth derivative, we would get a constant 24, and the fifth derivative would be exactly 0. This shows a fascinating property of polynomials. If you take enough derivatives, they eventually vanish into 0. We just saw how polynomials eventually vanish to 0, but not all functions behave this way. Sometimes we need to find a general formula for the nth derivative of a function rather than stopping at a specific number. This is especially useful in advanced calculus topics like Taylor series, where we need an infinite number of derivatives. To do this, our approach will be to calculate the first few derivatives manually, look carefully for a repeating mathematical pattern, and then write a general rule that describes that pattern for any whole number n. Let us see how this works with an exponential function. Applying this idea of finding patterns, let us find the general nth derivative for the exponential function, y equals e to the power of 3x. We start by finding the first derivative using the chain rule. The derivative of the inside function, 3x, is 3. So the 3 comes down to the front, giving us y prime equals 3e to the 3x. Next, we take the derivative of this new result to find the second derivative. The chain rule forces another 3 to come down from the exponent. This new 3 multiplies with the 3 that was already sitting in front. This multiplication gives us 9, which can also be written as 3 squared. Continuing our process, taking the third derivative brings down yet another 3, multiplying by the 9 to give 27, which is 3 cubed. We can now clearly see the pattern. Every time we take a derivative, we multiply the front coefficient by an additional factor of 3. The exponential part, e to the 3x, never changes. We can now write the general formula for any number of derivatives, represented by n. This is our final general formula. If we want the 100th derivative, we do not need to do the derivative process 100 times manually. We simply plug 100 in for n. This demonstrates how finding patterns can save us an enormous amount of mathematical work. Now that we have calculated these derivatives, you might wonder where they are actually used. Higher order derivatives are absolutely essential across science and engineering. In physics, the second derivative gives acceleration, which is the foundation of Isaac Newton's laws of motion. Without second derivatives, we could not calculate the forces acting on aeroplanes, bridges, or planets. In structural engineering, the bending and deflection of a physical beam under a heavy load is calculated using a fourth-order derivative. Furthermore, in pure mathematics, higher-order derivatives are used to determine the concavity of a curve, whether it curves upwards like a smile or downwards like a frown, which is crucial for finding maximum and minimum values in optimization problems.
We have reached the end of our topic. To summarize, higher order derivatives are simply derivatives of derivatives. They allow us to measure not just how fast a quantity is changing, but how fast that rate of change is itself changing. By repeatedly applying standard derivative rules, we can uncover deeper layers of information about a function's behavior, from its physical acceleration to its geometric curvature. You have now covered the full topic of higher order derivatives, from basic concepts to general patterns and real world applications. Great job following along, and keep practicing these techniques.